Greek and Roman theatre.
The word theater originated from ancient Greek words theastai and theatron. Latin influences developed the word into theatrum, which would finally adapt into theater in the late Middle Ages through English and French influences. Ancient Greek theater was also first established during ancient Greek times in Athens.
Festival of Dionysus, or City Dionysia, was one of the state's largest festivals and was considered an essential part of being a citizen. It was hosted in honor of the god Dionysus, god of wine and theatre in Greek times, and oriented around theatrical performances. These theatrical performances were all entered in a competition, which is then judged. Every year, the winning play would be engraved in stone, allowing these plays to be still known today.
The first festival of Dionysus took place in 487 BC, well after theater had been established. Ancient Greek society also introduced several other innovative contributions to theater. They are a society which might be considered as innovative. They introduced the amphitheater, essentially gave theater a stage, in which Greek performances took place. However, its basic structure still has an impact today.
They also introduced Aristotle's three unities: unity of time, Greek plays could only last up to 24 hours, the unity of space, meaning productions could only include one setting, and the unity of action. There had to be one main conflict or action during the play. They also introduced things simple as masks in theatres, which today are symbolic of theatre.
As you can tell, the Greeks contributed quite a lot to theater. Things as basic as dramatic dialogue. However, before theater and dialogue were introduced to Greek theater, Greek performances consisted of a chorus. The chorus was originally a group of 12 men chanting in unison, and emerged in the 6th century BC. One of the first choral performances was a hymn to the god Dionysus at a festival. The chorus was somewhat of a drama dance. The chorus was a large component of Greek performances, but was revolutionized when Thespis stepped in. He is considered the first actor to introduce dramatic dialogue and action to the stage. As of this moment, theater is revolutionized, and it all starts with
the four Greek greats, all of which had a massive impact on theatre. The four greats were Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes. It's most important to note that these plays were split up into tragedies and comedies at the time. The earliest Greek great was Aeschylus. He introduced a second actor to the chorus, all of which reflected on his plays. Earlier tragedies focused on one chorus and one actor, but Aeschylus moved focus from chorus to characters, introducing more dramatic dialogue into theatre and increasing the conflict and dramatic action in plays, so that conflicts and personalities were highlighted. At this point, the chorus became the underlying moral voice of the audience, defining their place in Greek theatre.
Oresteia is one of his best plays and clearly outlines the structure in Greek tragedies. Similar to three-part blockbusters we have today, three-part tragedies existed in ancient Greek plays. Anyways, back to Oresteia. Aeschylus' three-part tragedy is one of the oldest records of this format. It's a story of revenge in which three parts tell the story of three generations of a family. The three parts were named Agamemnon, Libation Bearers, and Eumenides. Oresteia was performed at City Dionysus in 458 BC and won the prize. This play won him the theatrical competition, thus, his play was engraved onto stone and Aeschylus made his mark on history.
Sophocles introduced a third actor to the stage. He best represented the barrier between God and man by diverting away from actor being man rather than God. This showed contrast and followed different principles from the other two main traditions. However, was a more traditional approach, where the actor represented a god or had godlike characteristics. This edges away from a more realistic approach the other two traditions took. There is also some contradiction where his ideas were modern, a third actor, but his principles were older and less realistic.
Let's straighten that out a little bit by talking about Sophocles and the actor's role in his plays. Before Aeschylus, the actor represented a god. Once Aeschylus arrived, his characters edged away from godlike characteristics, and the actor represented humans. As mentioned before, Sophocles takes somewhat of a step back to traditional ancient Greek plays in which the actor is closer to God. The role of the actor is an important part of ancient Greek theater because each tragedian represented the actor in a different fashion.
Euripides was a third tragic great Greek playwright. Even though he did introduce his own ideas and did contribute to Greek theatre at the time, many of his ideas were influenced by both Aeschylus and Sophocles. Aeschylus influenced his approach to the actor's role and brought the realistic human characters to Euripides' plays. Sophocles influenced the modern take on having three actors in his plays. Not that he didn't introduce his own components to ancient Greek theatre. In his play Medea, he introduced the component Deus ex machina, in which an unexpected god or power was sent down on a crane to intervene in a play during a hopeless situation.
This introduces a different way of including gods in a play without making the gods themselves the actor. Now that the basics of tragedy have been covered, on to ancient Greek comedy. Ancient Greek comedy was split up into 3 eras: Old Comedy, Middle Comedy, and New Comedy. Old Comedy focused on obscene plays with satire components and strong moral overtones. Middle Comedy highly criticized society. These satire-like plays had odd man/goat masks to represent the rude genre. Middle Comedy occurred during a period of social transition and was glossed over.
Last but not least, New Comedy, ironically more than 2,500 years old. This era was considered modern and elegant as opposed to the sloppy, older comedies. Menander is considered the sole playwright of New Comedy. Love interests were more commonly found in Menander's work, and similar to tragedy, he leaned towards more realistic plays and representations of society.
Regardless of the era of comedy, Aristophanes stuck out the most. Using parody, puns, and bold and colorful language, he was able to convey the full spectrum of emotions, and through satire and ridiculous exaggeration, he poked fun at the more ridiculous facets of Greek city life. By giving the best representations of Greek society at the time, he became the most popular comedic playwright, leaving behind 11 plays through City Dionysus victories. This made him the absolute coolest comedian there was during ancient Greek times. Well, now comes the sad part. I'm sure that by now you've become very attached to Greek society and you basically feel like you were living the plays then and there. But the Roman Empire has been growing for quite some time in Europe, and Greek is its next target.
265 BC, the Roman Republic commenced the invasion of Greece, quickly incorporating Greek drama into their culture. By 240 BC, Greece is entirely in the hands of the Romans, and most of its forms of theatre are common in Rome. Early on, the Romans acted out theatre at the Ludi Romani festivals. These festivals carried out basic comedy and tragedy plays. However, even though they were said to be religious, this was more of an excuse for the upper classes to seem like they weren't setting up festivals to simply have fun.
Out of all the known facts of the history of Roman theater, the most evident is the enormous influence the Greeks had on them. Firstly, the Romans built their stadiums around the Greek amphitheaters, utilizing the shape and to the advantage of the spectators. Throughout most stages of Roman Republic and Empire, playwrights practically translated Greek plays into Latin, changing very little. For this reason, and many more, the Romans can be seen as imitators and the Greeks as innovators. Later on, many plays utilized Aristotle's 3 unities. However, this resulted in a rather large failure. The Roman people didn't want to see plays that followed rules. They wanted to be put on the edge of their seats. Rapidly, playwrights started noticing they couldn't simply translate the plays. They needed to spice things up by adding Roman allusions to the performances.
This process was dubbed Romanization. It slightly modified plays to appeal to the Roman audience. This included the addition of sex, violence, and Roman jokes, as most Greek plays of the time contained many gags that could only be understood by people familiar with Greek references. We must also note that these plays had to be entertaining, as they were constantly competing with gladiator and animal fights that were happening at the same time.
One of the great playwrights of the Roman era was Plautus of the Roman Republic. He was known for his excellent adapted comedic plays. Plautus managed to incorporate Romanization into Greek plays wonderfully. However, he never wrote the plays himself. They were all of Greek origin. He was also one of the first playwrights to successfully attract most of the audience away from the other sensationalist performances, due to his first and foremost goal:
to entertain. It is also believed that his use of stock characters would later on influence commedia dell'arte, a form of theatre that was based on the utilization of stereotypical personas. He was also the only famous playwright to continue Aristophanes' social satire of the time. He frequently mocked the society he lived in. All in all, out of the astonishing 130 plays he wrote, only 21 remain.
The other outstanding playwright of the time was Terence, a refined comedian who expertly modified Menander's plays. However, unlike Plautus, he quickly moved along, creating plays by himself. Plautus, a man of masses, contrasted to Terence, who preferred creating work for his upper classes, allowing him to create elaborate scripts. Furthermore, Terence dismissed the utilization of farces, spending more time on developing characterization and dialogue. Along with Plautus, Terence kept great new comedy alive for future theatergoers. Nevertheless, due to the refined nature of his plays, he was way less popular than Plautus. Throughout his life, he only wrote 6 plays, all of which are still intact.
Once Plautus and Terence died, there was a large gap in the representation of Roman drama. The people moved back to the awe-inspiring spectacle of the time: gladiator fights. near the beginning of the Roman Empire, the last of the Roman greats wrote his plays. Seneca, the only tragedian of the lot, based his plays off of the three great tragedians of the Greek times. He followed all the rules set up by the Greeks, including the 5-act rules and the 3 unities of Aristotle. Fascinated by violence and horror, Seneca included all the gory bits in his plays. However, it still remains uncertain whether his plays were simply meant for private reading or for performance.
Soon enough, the Roman Empire began to fade away. Its once awe-inspiring strength began to vanish, losing its grip on Europe. By 2nd century AD, the only sources of theatricality were mime and pantomime.
Mime and pantomime were satirical performances mocking Christianity that focused on physicality to express their ideas. Contrary to previous mime and pantomime performances in earlier Roman history, at this time they did not use masks at all.
To
To round this all up, here is a timeline of all the greats.